Are you ready to navigate the new way to work? Forbes Books presents Dare to Care in the Workplace with Kathleen Quinn Botaw. Here's Kathleen.
My guest this week is Clint Pulver. Clint is a keynote speaker, workforce expert, and leading authority on employee retention. He's transformed how corporations like Keller Williams, AT&T, and Hewlett-Packard create lasting loyalty through his work and research. He's also the author of I Love It Here, How Great Leaders Create Organizations Their People Never Want to Leave. Clint, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
So excited to have this conversation because I just saw you speak in May at the Colorado National Speakers Association. It was our first in-person meeting, and it was so much fun. You were fantastic. What did you think about the event?
Oh, it was wonderful. I mean, Mile High City, gasping for air as I was drumming and performing. It was great. It was awesome. The crowd was amazing. That chapter is incredible. It was great to meet you. There's so many good people. It was a great event.
Well, thank you for joining us in Mile High. And yes, it is hard to breathe up here.
It is. I ended that drum solo and I was like, man, I am either getting old or out of shape. My cholesterol's through the roof, or we're a mile above sea level here.
It was just the mile, because you're definitely not getting too old. I've got something on you there, buddy. So someone who's a leading authority on employee retention, you must be really, really busy right now talking to a lot of companies. So tell us where you've been, what you've been doing, and what your message is around employee retention.
Yeah, it's been nice to get back out of the pandemic. Live events are happening again, and the pandemic caused some massive disruption, especially in the workforce world, and when it comes to employee retention and engagement and the work from home situation, and just that dynamic of trying to keep and retain talent has been a big pain point for a lot of organizations. So, which has been great for us to come in and help and to support. And for the last 5.5 years, I've traveled the world as the Undercover Millennial. It's kind of like undercover boss without the makeup.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a millennial by generation, so that's the generation I was born in. And I was young enough where I would be able to go into organizations as someone who was looking for a job. And I'd kind of throw on my backwards hat, my normal street clothes, a hoodie, and I'd go into an organization. I'd say, hey, I'm just looking for work. What's it like to work here? Would you recommend it? And it always gets really quiet. The employee starts to look around. It feels like an illegal drug exchange. And then everything. They tell me everything, the good, the bad, what they love, what they don't love, what they can't stand, who they can't stand. And in that environment that I was able to create, we were able to get honesty, authenticity. We were able to get real answers because I wasn't a survey, right? I wasn't a one-on-one management meeting. I was just a potential hire. And we've done that for 5.5 years now and worked with hundreds of organizations and have interviewed over 10,000 employees undercover. And wrote a book about it and took it to the market last year, and it became a bestseller. It was a really, really cool book, and I think that it was so successful because it wasn't another leadership book kind of written by a self-proclaimed leadership guru. This was a book written by 10,000 employees who knew when their leaders were getting it right. And I decided to title the book, I Love It Here, How Great Leaders Create Organizations Their People Never Want to Leave. And that was really the magic of the research when I would go into an organization and employee after employee would say, I love it here. I love it here. I love my job. I love what I'm doing. Like, I don't plan on leaving. Like, this is a place that I feel seen. I feel heard. I feel understood. Yeah. So that's what I wrote about, and that's what I travel and speak about, and been a professional drummer for a long time as well. So we add elements of drums and music and that inspirational side of the equation into the performance, and I'm very lucky to do what I do.
Yes, you are, and you're very good at it. And I love the title of your book. I love that you use love. I Love It Here is a great title. What are the key things that millennials want?
Yeah, I think for me, first of all, I learned that it's not so much a generational thing. A lot of times they'll say,
Agreed.
well, yeah, millennials want this, or Gen Z wants this. And man, I just don't, that was not true in my research. I'd find some millennials that were lazy, entitled, that wanted all the things that sometimes we deem that generation as wanting or having. But then I found millennials who were extremely loyal, hardworking, wanted to earn their stripes. And I just don't think you can put a generation in a box and say, well, every one of these generational ages wants these types of things. I think there is no generational hack. There's no one size fits all, and it's up to the manager to get to know their people on an individual basis. So for me, it's not so much generational as it is just people. How do we practice good business, not just good generational tactics? Now, I get that certain people are born in certain times, and those times change. And cell phones and technology and TikTok and all of those things, they enter a dynamic of how we would view certain things, or how we would decide certain things, or where we spend our time. But people are still people. People still, there's universal principles that are streamlined through baby boomers down to Gen Z. And that's really what I found in my research, were those through line principles of what people really worked for. And it didn't matter what generation or age you were in.
So what do they work for?
Yeah, I think the first big thing that we discovered was mentorship versus management. When an employee hated their job, they always talked about a manager. When an employee loved their job, they described a mentor, this mentor of sorts. And it wasn't necessarily the leader of the organization. It wasn't always the manager. And sometimes they were a manager and they were a leader. But the cool part about mentorship is we found this unique thing in the research where mentorship had to be chosen. Like you might have had a title as a leader. You could have been a manager, a director, an administrator, but your people chose you as a mentor. And I think you can't become a mentor in an employee's life until that employee invites you into their heart. And if you've ever had a mentor in your life, you chose that person. You chose them because they were someone that represented possibilities of what could be. We found 4 different types of managers in our research, and those determining factors that really helped us to split up who they were and the effects that they had in their organization was really based off of 2 variables: the standards that manager had, and then second, their connection. So the standards would be like your ability to hold employees at a specific standard. Like I need you to show up on time. We've got safety protocol. We've got regulations. We need to stay profitable. We have a company vision statement that we need to uphold. We need to, do X, Y, and Z to maintain cleanliness in the work environment. All these, there's standards in the job. But then the second piece was connection, empathy, the ability to relate, the ability to connect, the intangibles, the stuff that we can't trace, the stuff that we can't put a statistic next to. And if an employee was ever satisfied or dissatisfied with their job, I could always narrow it down to those 2 things that the manager was or was not doing. And we found really 4 that the employees undercover described. And it was interesting that as they described these specific bosses, because I feel like the leadership, again, it's been said many times by many different people that they're the number one reason why people stay in a workplace. They're also the number one reason why people leave. I found that to be true. Yes, there's benefits, there's pay, there's compensation, there's culture, all those things. But really, if you have a crappy boss, you have a crappy manager, you have somebody that you just don't feel safe around, someone that you can't relate to, someone that doesn't listen to you, you don't feel heard or seen, that's the number one complaint. And so the first manager that we kind of found we called them the removed manager. And so this was the individual, they were low on standards and they were low on connection. So they're just completely removed from the organization. They're burnt out, they're tired. So this created disengagement in their employees. So we found undercover that everybody was just removed from the manager. There was no respect for the manager. There was no connection to the manager. They were just removed, disengaged. These are the managers that probably should have stopped managing 20 years ago.
Or never managed in the first place. Exactly.
Totally. And then number 2 was the buddy manager. So this manager was really high on connection, but they were low on standards. So these were the managers, they wanted to be liked more than they were respected. Like they didn't want to ruffle feathers. They wanted to, have relationships with everybody, and they wanted everybody to like them, and they would go play Xbox on the weekends with the team. And then Monday morning they came in, they tried to be the boss, and everyone's like, I just saved you in Call of Duty on Saturday. And now you're the manager. So it created what we found, Kathleen, it created a sense of entitlement in the employee workforce where most of the time, a lot of the employees became more of the boss than the boss was.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, and then the number three was the controller. In our research, and it was the most common, unfortunately. And this was the manager that was really high on standards and low on connection. So these were the managers that it's kind of my way or the highway. Command and control. I don't care about what you did on the weekend. Do your job. Like, you want us to love you? No, smile. I give you a paycheck. Tomorrow's going to be worse. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just an authoritative, just, I'm not here to be your friend. And so this created rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
So it was pushback. It was a constant head-to-head battle between employee and manager. And some managers like thrived off of this. They loved kind of that fear-based manipulation, the tactic of easy come, easy go. Like, I'll fire you if you don't perform. That's
Mm-hmm.
all about development. But number four, Kathleen, this was really the sweet spot of it all, and I call them the mentor manager. And this was the individual that was high on standards. They understood that we have a job to get done. There's priorities, there's protocol. We need to stay profitable. But they were also equally as high on their ability to connect with the individuals.
Excellent. And what percentage was number 4, the mentor?
Yeah, so unfortunately, about 25%.
Of the 10,000 that you
Correct.
actually,
Correct.
that's a tragedy, isn't it?
It is. It is. But man, if you could achieve it, if you could earn that position in the hearts of your employees, man, the good that those managers, those leaders were able to do as the mentor, it was powerful.
Excellent research and really clear delineation between how people behave with one another. And you said something really profound that I heard from a mentor of mine, Ronnie Mostyn, years and years and years and years ago. The question is, do you want to be liked or do you want to be respected? How important is that for the manager?
It's everything. And because I think, again, if you're striving to be liked versus respected, when you're liked, it's hard to uphold the standards, right? If you're trying to please and be the friend and the buddy to everybody. But the mentor comes at an angle of there's a level of respect because he's there or she's there to grow you. They're there to develop you, but they also are there to advocate for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that creates a certain level of respect. And I found too, Kathleen, in our research, every employee was really asking the question of their workplace. They were asking the question, let me know when this gets to the part about me. Like, let me know, manager Susie, when you care about me and my family, my career aspirations, my goals, and I know that sometimes in leadership we hear that and we think, well, those entitled little shining stars in our lives. Like, oh my gosh, if I hear one more millennial or one more Gen Z employee say, I'll get to the part about me, I'm going to lose it. But I would say it's not so much about entitlement as it is about just good business. And when mentors did that, when they led with connection, I wrote in the book, I said, no significant loyalty will ever happen without significant connection. And
100% agree with you.
Yeah,
100% agree with you. In my book, Dare to Care in the Workplace, I have a chapter on community. We're actually not building companies. We're building communities based on relationships with human beings. Why do you think it's so hard when we cross the threshold into our offices or our domain that we call work, that we mess up the relationships between humans?
I think there's a lot of different dynamics in that question because every workplace is different. I think, I mean, in our research, we found a lot of the controllers were controlling managers because their upper management was controlling, and the CEO was controlling, and the owner of the business was a controller. And so everybody felt this pressure that if I don't uphold high standards and we don't develop and we don't, we're not scaling, we're not growing, we're not more profitable this quarter than we were last quarter, then someone's losing their job. It was all fear-based. And so that weighted in more versus creating a safe environment, creating the connection. I don't know. It's kind of like that bank account principle, right? If you make the deposits of trust, and that allows you to make the withdrawals.
Mm-hmm.
But too many managers were trying to make the withdrawals, and they had made no connections of trust. there was no relationship. And so obviously there's no connection, there's no loyalty, there's no care, there's no, it's a toxic workplace. It's a place that's not sustainable. It did get results. I will admit this. It did get results in certain aspects, but it was never sustained. It was never long term. It never lasted.
And
And
you use the word empathy, and I write also in my book about empathy too. Empathy is really putting yourself in someone else's shoes, listening to them from their point of view. But I believe the kicker is you're listening to them without judgment. And so which one of these, how does the mentor manager in your book, I love it here, how do they, get to that nirvana place? Because I hear all the time, oh, you have to be more empathetic. Our leaders have to be more empathetic. Our managers have to be more empathetic, but they don't know how to do that. So do you help companies train people on how to get to that mentor manager?
yeah, one thing that we found that when in the undercover research, when we saw these incredible individuals that earned the right to be called mentor in the eyes of their people, we asked the people so I would go in, do the undercover research, and then after, sometimes there was a reveal, but then sometimes I would just go straight to the company directors. I would go to the administration, the people that hired me to come in and do the undercover research. And I would say, okay, Joe and Tom and Sally and Brittany and Jessica are killing it. And I need to talk to them because I need to know what they're doing. I need to know what their philosophies are. I need to know. And then I would go and reveal myself and talk to the employees. And so we were able to kind of piece together, like, okay, why? What's the reason why? Like, why do you stay in this company and work harder and stay longer for John? Well, because John's my mentor. Okay, but why? Like, what is it that John possesses that when you look at him, he's the mentor in the story, not the manager? And we narrowed it down to, I call them the 5 C's of mentorship. And if you achieve this in the workplace, it's because your employees, when they look at you, they see these 5 C's. So the first C is confidence. Employees talked about the confidence that they had in the manager being consistently trusted. Confidence exudes trust. These managers, these leaders, were confident in their ability to lead. They were confident in their ability that I can get us from point A to point B to point C. They were confident in their communication. It created greater trust. I need to be confident in you that you can lead me, that that you have a sense of confidence in yourself and your ability to help me, right? I'm choosing you as a mentor because of that confidence. The second thing was credibility. What's your background? What's your history? What's your resume? Like, okay, you're the mechanic manager, but have you ever been on the ground level? Where did you start? Where did you go to school? Where did you train? Like that creates relevancy. The third C was competence. Their ability to not just be a theorist, but to be a practitioner. Employees talked about these individuals that were mentors. They had the ability to jump in and play the same game that they were playing. They weren't just people that were sitting back managing a schedule, managing a supply chain. They weren't just making sure people checked in and holding meetings. Like, they were people that were actually thoroughly proficient in the thing that they were training and guiding people in doing. And I think sometimes we don't see that dynamic in management. We think that, okay, I'm the manager, I don't do that stuff, that's your job, but I'll hold the meeting and discuss why it needs to be done. And man, even as a professional drummer, like I want to learn from somebody who's competent in the instrument, not just someone who's well versed in percussion theory, if that makes sense. The fourth C was candor. Great mentors had the ability to create relationships so strong, Kathleen, that honesty could exist. Employees talked about this, and also the managers talked about this, that they made the deposits of trust, but that allowed them to make the withdrawals. They created this environment that through those deposits of trust, through those deposits of connection, they could have candid conversations. They were able to go to those employees and say, hey, listen, Sally, you know how much I care about you. You know how much I'm here. I'm on your team. I'm on your side. I'm with you. But we need to change a few things. few things need to get better. Because remember our goals. Remember what I'm trying to help you to achieve. Remember what you wanted to achieve, right? They created a growth development plan. I talk about the status interview in the book. They did different things that got them on that side of the employee so they could have those candid conversations. Most great mentors that you choose as a great mentor, you want the candid feedback. You want the honest, authentic, real stuff.
There's a great author, Susan Scott, who's on my podcast as well, wrote the book Fierce Conversations. And being able to be respectful but candid and intimate with one another, what needs to get done it's a really important point. So your fifth C.
And then the fifth C is caring. The ability to just give a darn. Again, are we advocating for people as much as we're developing them? And so those are the 5 C's: confidence, credibility, competence, candor, and the ability to care. If you possess those qualities in the eyes of your employees, that's what they were working for. That's what they were staying longer for. That's who they were committed to. These are the people that they talked about that became legendary in their lives. And if you look at your life, Kathleen, if I look at my life, if I've ever chosen a mentor in my life, it was because in my mind they possessed those 5 C's. I chose them because of that. And so I think it's really important for leaders and managers to evaluate yourself and say, okay, how am I showcasing this? How am I proving this? How am I consistently keeping this the main thing? I think the coolest part about the job of a manager or the job of a leader is that it matters. The hardest part about the job is that it matters every day.
Absolutely. Well, hang on, Clint. We have to stop here, but coming up in the second part of my conversation with speaker and author Clint Pulver, Clint shares the impact his parents have had on his life and career.
I kind of often describe my mom as that's what I guess you could call her, the controller maybe. She's a little higher on standards. My dad was always a big advocator, a little more higher on the connection side of things. A lot of my musical connection and background comes from my dad, but my discipline and consistency and drive comes from my mother. But they were both just very intricate roles in my life, and it was a great balance as a kid.
This has been Dare to Care in the Workplace. To connect with Kathleen, go to KathleenQuinnBotaw.com. Kathleen's book, Dare to Care, is available wherever books are sold. Dare to Care in the Workplace is a production of Forbes Books.